doing 2 episodes. The first episode is a typical local look episode with various guests. The second episode will be This Local Life. The theme will be mendacity. And both episodes will be delivered in various styles of leisurely recitation. Thank you, Coach.
Formerly on KQUA in San Francisco, this is Local Look, Seattle's premier podcast of arts, culture, and academia. Now on TomMoonComedy.com.
Local Look.
This is Local Look. I'm Elliott Rose.
And I'm Frederick Enderson.
At the top of the show, we have with us Brant Clover, recent winner of the Sadie Award, the award for coming on stage and accepting an award. Congratulations, Brant.
Ever since I was a child, I've always wanted to win the Sadie Award, the award for coming on stage and accepting an award.
Congratulations again, Brant.
Thanks for having me.
Today on Local Look, we welcome Gabby Shiori, zoologist of the Seattle National Zoo and author of the best-selling book, Apex Predator Guilt, Psychology and Psychoses of Apex Predators. Tell us a little bit more, Gabby.
Well, Elliott, Apex Predator Guilt is a close look at the relationship between predators and their prey. Scientists have found that apex predators tend to exhibit guilt or regret after a kill. Cheetahs, for example, are found to run much slower as they age. This isn't due, as you might suspect, to markers of old age, like arthritis, but instead due to the high number of kills they have achieved in their lifetime, and the resulting burden of guilt that weighs upon them for said kills. You might be familiar with the Native American practice of prayer after a kill, thanking a felled animal for its sacrifice to nurture oneself and family. It is believed that this practice was first observed in grizzly bears and wolves, and was adapted by early human tribes to help assuage their own apex predator guilt. In fact, the only apex predator that does not experience apex predator guilt is the whale shark. This is perhaps due to their reputation as gentle giants among the denizens of the sea, or perhaps due to the simple fact that plankton does not have a soul. Also, early research shows that prey, especially older or aged prey, shows some early signs of survivor's guilt, though more research is needed.
Well said. Thanks for the scholarship, Gabby.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, we have with us today origami artist Delaney Gray, whose work is currently on display this month at the Seattle Center for the Performing Paper Arts. The show is entitled From the Mouths of Babes, Infant Non-Subject-Centered Rorschach Origami Analysis. In her show, Gray offers representations in paper of spit-up patterns on mothers' and fathers' shirts and highlights the significance of these patterns for our understanding of early childhood development. So I think an obvious question, do you think infants are trying to communicate with us via their spit-up?
Well, it's not that I actually believe that they're trying to communicate with us via their spit-up, but if you use non-subject-centered Rorschach techniques to analyze the shapes the spit-up leaves on parents' shirts, the result is astounding. Almost all of the shapes are indicative of very straightforward emotional states. For instance, shapes with predominantly rounded edges indicate satiety, and the more jagged shapes, something.
Yes, Satiety, you said?
Satiety, indeed. And in fact, this is just it, our greatest finding. And what I aim to represent in every piece of origami that I've produced for the show is the spectrum of infant feeling that ranges from the more pained and polygonal to the more pleasant and rotund.
Fascinating. Thanks for sharing your work.
Thank you.
And now, holistic remedies, Sadie Thompson. What remedies do you have for us this week, Sonny?
Well, Elliott, we all get depressed, we all get stressed out, and this can cause a variety of problems. I'm here today to talk about, in particular, underarm rashes. They're caused by collagen activators. They are the problem, they are the culprit, and the solution, surprisingly enough, is dandelion petals. Interesting note, dandelion is an old French word indicating dante, tooth, and lion, lion, lion's tooth. And I'll tell you what, these petals certainly are like a ferocious, sharp-toothed lion when it comes to eradicating underarm rashes. Definitely recommend.
Fascinating. Thanks.
Namaste.
And now, for another installment of our longest-running series, Lifestyles, with Ken Roth.
I used to own an art gallery. I used to walk barefoot. I owned an apple orchard. I was a fruitarian. I traded my chord for an orange grove. Now I eat worms. Now I shop at Albertsons. I am Ken Roth. I am a drawer in a dresser. I despise cubes. Put me on an airplane.
Welcome to the show, Haley Chris Howard, President of the Association of the Advancement of Passive Voice in North American Fantasy Literature. Namaste. So what exactly does your association do?
Generally speaking, the argument is made by us that passive voice should be used by all authors of fantasy literature in the Northern Americas. The argument is made by us, especially, that dragons should be using passive voice because their wisdom will be more clearly seen. Additionally, sorcerers are also to be provided with an elevated air by passive voice.
Do you have anything to interject, Frederick?
Could you talk a little more about goblins?
Of course. This is also an argument made by us. The speech of goblins should be written in active voice. Goblins are accordingly made to sound mundane. Originality in goblin speech is thereby produced.
Well said. Thanks for allowing our questions to be answered.
I'm very glad to have been had by the show.
Presently, one of our oldest segments, entitled Titles, with book and article title collector, Brandiow Martinskiow. So, what do you have for us this week?
Well, let's just start with this title. The Jewish Toyota, Brooklyn's Epstein Motors, and the making of the first compact car. I didn't actually crack this one open, but just judging from the title, maybe we should think that Jewish people in Brooklyn invented the fuel-efficient car. Here's another one. Here's one I really like. Sheep Teeth Smoothies, Annals of the Roane County 7th Grade Science Fair. Simply superb title. I couldn't help but look inside this book. And the strangest thing is, apart from the sheep teeth smoothies, which was an entry in the health sciences division, there were actually a number of other teeth entries. In fact, most of the entries reported on in this book involve teeth in one way or another. And for some reason, the author doesn't draw any attention to this fact. In any case, some of the other projects were the teeth volcano that erupts teeth, the hamster teeth hydro rocket. There's also an entry that analyzes the smell of teeth. It's called Teeth Smell. And I think the most provocative title is Teeth, the Toenails of the Mouth. Anyways, great book, great titles. Finally, we have an excellent, far-out, obscure academic article, Feminist Archaeology of Ergonomics, evaluating the artifacts of chauvinist comfort design. Again, I didn't read the article, but it sounds like it could have been titled The Reclining Chairs and Armrests of Oppression, or some such thing.
Fascinating as always. Thanks for the titles, Brandio.
No problem, Elliott.
And now for Pensée d'Escalier, or Stair Thoughts, or Afterthoughts.
I'm the cave master for an RPG called Cave Goblins. I'm pretty good at it. But one of the level 4 cave goblins hates me, and always has. And the other night he was like, "You obviously don't understand the Rendelian light harness, because if you did, you wouldn't have just rewarded Ronaldo 10 sagacity points for that tactical cave navigation." I'm furious, right? How can he talk to me like that? But I'm cave master, so I can't say anything. I'm pretty professional. But sometimes I think I shouldn't be. I should have told him, of course a level 4 cave goblin would think that about the Rendelian light harness, because level 4 cave goblins have yet to acquire the proper number of immunity points that would allow them to combat the bat pathogen that acts as a ceiling on the potential for access to the appropriate number of sagacity points required to truly understand the Rendelian light harness. So yeah, I'm the one that doesn't get it.
And now for our newest tech segment, Unique Beep Beep Beep. This week in the studio, inventor Rania Turnquist. So, what's your latest invention, Rania?
Well, for the past 6 months, I've been working on what I call covert breathalyzers. I've got a whole collection of musical instruments capable of determining inebriation. I've got a whole collection of musical instruments capable of determining inebriation levels. We've got the harmonica analyzer, the flute analyzer, the trumpet analyzer, the oboe analyzer, the sousaphone analyzer, and the French horn analyzer, all of which can measure the blood alcohol levels of even the worst players. So when a police officer pulls a driver over and they're reluctant to take a breathalyzer test, the officer can be like, "Hey, do you want to play this sousaphone?" And the driver will be like, "Of course, I've always wanted to play a sousaphone." And then, problem solved.
Exquisite. Thanks for sharing your work with us.
Thanks for having me.
And now for another installment of our longest running series, Lifestyles, with Cleese Rell.
I used to buy ugly fruit. My name was Robbie Schroeder. Now I buy spearmint Tic Tacs. My name is Cleese Rell. A walk was a crawl. Now I have mandatory 7-foot-tall legs. I made up my own language and sleep under a pile of leaves. Alive leaves. They were dead, but I'm a necrobotanist mancer. What's up?
And now for Food, Food, Food with Isabella Cantillini.
So as you know, I eat out a lot. And one thing I've been noticing, and this may be exclusive to Seattle. Anyway, I've been noticing something I'd call performance food. So it's something like performance art, but not quite like a dinner show. It's just not as entertaining, or if it is in an interesting, an intense and uncomfortable way. Anyway, so the first place I went to is Leavenworth, and yes, it's named after the prison, and like a prison, as you're standing in line, there are guards around you, and there are inmates standing in line with you, and while you're eating, they say things to you like, "What are you looking at?" One of them blew my aunt the creepiest kiss, and then chomped his teeth at her like he was going to bite her. Anyway, the food was great. 2-course meal, so strange. Anyway, the first course was a lobster salad with a raspberry pomegranate vinaigrette. Very good. The second course, which that just means what's on the left side of your tray. Anyway, the second course was a ground lamb shepherd's pie. The whole meal was kind of like some sort of zany prison surf and turf. Very strange, but very good again. I don't think I'd go back. They don't do takeout. But again, very unique experience. The second place I went to was a very interesting establishment called Meet the Parents. I took my boyfriend this time. So the whole restaurant is something kind of like a connected series of dining rooms, like the type you find in rich upper middle class white houses. So the hostess brought us to this dining room, and there was a nice set of oak table and chairs, a chandelier, a beautiful rug, some nice American looking art on the wall. And anyway, we were sat with a couple who, I don't know how to put this, they were just obviously disappointed in us. The man was silently and stiffly angry, and the woman was seemed very afraid of him and nervous, though like 1/8 of her was secretly accommodating us. Kind of. Anyway, the food was okay. The wine was delicious. Columbia Valley, a place called Robin's. Excellent, very dry.
Thanks for that, Isabella.
Thank you.
And now for Beth Betterson with In Our Beth Interest. So Beth, what's in our Beth interest this week?
Well, Elliott, the salmon locks in Ballard are great, and while you're at it, realize that as an immortal being, realize that we are immortal beings with a true function and a true nature, and even more importantly, a true Beth interest.
I'll keep that in mind. And now for an ad from our sponsor.
Consideration from Seattle Museum of Dentistry. This month featuring the special exhibit POW, Right in the Kisser, which showcases famous Seattle boxers and the dentists who care for them. To find out more about this special exhibit and others, visit us in Belltown or on the web at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry/kisser.org or at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry.
And now, Beth Betterson with In Our Beth Interest. So Beth, what's in our Beth interest this week?
Well, Elliott, I recommend a trip to the Chocolate Factory and perhaps stop by Gasworks Park. And while you're there, realize that as being subject to destruction and depravity, we need obey the moral rules of a superior intellect that is the source of all existence. Moral rules that are, above all, concerned with our own Beth interest.
I'll keep that in mind. Now, explaining the mysterious with the more mysterious. And here to do just that is occultist Mindy Freeman.
Let's consider perception and the mechanical philosophy. If the world is like a bunch of billiard balls bouncing off billiard balls, and the color of an object must transmit itself through the air towards our eyes, then why is our field of vision not filled with color? Why, instead, is it filled with what we might call vacancies of hue? Now, this is a 12th century problem, and my favorite solution comes from 13th century Italy. The solution? There are color cleansing spirits that feed on colors in transit, and you can see these spirits, or at least their vehicles. These called can be seen, for instance, in the midst of light streaming through a window. So as much as I like this theory, I don't find it quite compelling and believe that there is a more interesting, perhaps a more mysterious explanation out there. Just as with the mechanistic picture, the world of color is transmitting itself to our eyes, but instead of delivering itself linearly, it does so in a circle, like a water wheel, delivering color. And the interior of this circle is, of course, transparent.
Extremely mysterious explanation.
Thanks, Madeleine.
And now, Seattle's own Zen futurist, Homeron Bosch. What teachings do you have for us this week?
Why dwell in the dark shade of the moment when you could be basking in the warm sunlight of tomorrow, next week, next year, or even amidst the several millennia closing in on us like relief from the painful present? Only the very foolish and decadent caterpillar directs his gaze inwards, opposed to looking at the beautiful butterfly that he will become.
And now, expert on cannibal cuisine in cannibal culinary pedagogy, Eustace Blanchard. Her new book is called Engineering the Cannibal Palate, a rum in its culinary pedagogy. What are the most important things to know about Harum?
Well, first of all, he was the George Washington Carver of cannibal cuisine. So, for the longest time, you just had perhaps human steaks and eyeball stew. But now you have human butter, crinkle cut human chips, human parfait. The list just goes on and on.
Thanks for being on the show.
What a lot of people don't know is that he was first and foremost a teacher.
Schools of Uncognition. This week, polysyllabologic. And joining us today is polysyllabologician Richard No True Tetra. So, what is polysyllabologic?
Well, it's something like the following. Premise 1. If all convivial coruscant trident muron flavonoids are gasconadating luminescent natificators. Premise 2. And the sassiculus usufruct hargenbolinaton is a luminescent gasconadating natificator. A conclusion. Then the sassiculus usufruct hargenbolinaton is a convivial coruscant trident muron flavonoid.
Exquisite. Thanks for the gasconadating usufruct hargenbolin natification.
Anytime.
And now, another installment of King County Crime. And here with us today is Half Man, Half Plate of Spaghetti and Meatballs. Welcome to the show. So, Half Man, Half Plate of Spaghetti and Meatballs, what is your contribution to the reduction of crime in the greater Kings County area?
Well, I mostly work bank robberies and hostage situations. So for instance, last week, some bank robbers were holed up in a vault in Ravenna, and the cops called me in. And typically what I do is approach the perpetrators and ask, wouldn't you like some delicious spaghetti and meatballs? And 100% of the time they say yes, we're starving. Those look so delicious. So I let them have a couple of bites, and then I tie them up with my noodles.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Joining us now is Seattle's own elf queen of undead therapy, Elizabeth Keebler-Ross. Namaste. So what is undeath therapy?
It is a way of coping with the knowledge of our undeath or undying nature. And initially, the stages of this awareness begin with, initially at first, disbelief. One simply cannot believe that one is immortal. And the second and final stage is pure joy in the fact that one will never die.
Thanks for sharing your views with us.
Anytime.
That was the elf queen of undead therapy, Elizabeth Keebler-Ross. And now joining us is 10-year Seattle resident and former poet laureate of Great Britain, St. John Smythe, reading a poem from his new collection, Cow Thoughts, bovine-centered ontology, theology, and epistemology. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Understanding is a prickless... Excuse me. That was disgusting. Understanding is a prickly cactus geography, perfect for clever cows who can navigate its surface without being irrevocably impaled. Understanding defends itself against cows, but it doesn't mind the slimy milk trails that allow cows to chart the thoroughness of their tourism. Understanding is geographical. Understanding is difficult, and I suggest that it is so because it defends itself from cow abuse. All swollen and infected claims result from being pricked by one of its thorns. The history of cow ideas is sluggish, slimy milk trails on understanding's geography.
Join us now for the Seattle Action Insectarium, Rhonda Concanoma, insect drool expert. So, other than being an insect drool expert, what do you do at the Insectarium?
Well, actually, Elliott, right now I've been given the opportunity to employ my expertise full-time. This month at the Insectarium, we have our featured exhibit, which is bug drool, neurolinguistic pathways, and smelly bug talk. We've got over 50 kinds of bug drool on display, magnified, of course, and cast up onto video screens. And what we highlight in these images are the chemical structures present in the drool. You see, like us, insects talk using their mouths, though instead of emitting meaningful sounds, insects emit meaningful smells. These smells are in turn taken up by their fellow insect interlocutors and trigger in them toponymial neurolinguistic responses. And voila, we have insect communication. Accordingly, we also have 50 screens emitting identifiable smells of some sort, a sort of smell-o-vision, if you will. It's great fun.
Sounds like it. Thanks for joining us, Rhonda.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Here to talk to us about his new comic strip entitled Who is Mr. Gazergaliga? Cartoonist Dwight Dizelnhauer. So, Dwight, who is Mr. Gazergaliga?
If you look into his eyes, there is no more you. There is only Mr. Gazergaliga.
Well said. Thanks for joining us, Dwight.
My pleasure.
And now for a special treat, we have with us Pilgrim Scott to teach us how to play the guitar. Did you bring your guitar, Mr. Pilgrim?
To play an A chord, take your first, second, and third finger and place them on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings on the second fret. And and let it ring. Now you can play an open A chord. Play an A bar chord. Take your fourth, third, first, and second finger. Place your fourth finger on the fourth string, your second finger on the third string, your third finger on the fifth string, and your first finger on the sixth, second, and first string. Your first finger should be on the fifth fret. Your fourth finger should be on the seventh fret. Your second finger on the sixth fret. And your third finger on the seventh fret. And let it ring. Now you can play an A bar chord.
And that concludes the first half of Local Look. Formally,
On KQUA in San Francisco,
This is Local Look.
Seattle's premier podcast.
Arts, culture, and academia.
Now on TamoomComedy.com.
while Frederick and I were putting together this live show, we came to this embarrassing realization.
You see, we keep the Local Look offices very dark.
Very, very dark.
So dark you can't see your hand in front of your face.
And as we were putting the show together, we realized that we had never actually seen one another.
The offices in KQUA are the same way. Pitch black.
And so, when
Cheryl's our chief intern.
when Daryl paid the electricity, this is Sharon Trees.
Cheryl Street.
Cheryl's our chief intern. But when Elliott and I saw each other for the first time,
It's true what they say. The people in radio look nothing like how their voices sound.
I imagined Elliott as a 5'10" man with loose black hair.
And instead, I wear it in a bun. Whereas I imagine Frederick as having a full beard.
Where instead I have a goatee. When we saw each other for the first time,
It was jarring. It was like, how have I heard you, worked beside you, had you as the best man for my wedding, and never really seen you, Frederick?
some would say it's because of the lack of light in our offices.
Others would say it's because Frederick didn't actually attend Elliott's wedding.
And yet others would say it was due to one simple reason. We prefer to be left in the dark. We like our imagined worlds better than the world as is.
And that's when we realized, with the lights out, it's less dangerous.
In this half hour of Local Look Live, we look at the world we can't see with 3 tone poems. Canto 1, Depths Beyond Repair, where one intrepid intern holds on, even when she has no reason to. After the break.
Consideration from Seattle Museum of Dentistry. This month featuring the special exhibit POW! Right in the Kisser, which showcases famous Seattle boxers and the dentists who care for them. To find out more about this special exhibit and others, visit us in Belltown or on the web at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry/kisser.org or at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry.
policy at Local Look is we interview our correspondents in case of litigation, and also as a keepsake. Here's one from Daryl Threed's in-house interview.
Cheryl.
When exactly did you first start working for Local Look?
Well, as you know, I've been working for Local Look since about 2013. I moved out here from Oregon.
I'm aware of that place. So what brought you to Seattle?
Well, I had been applying for an internship position with Local Look since about 2008 when I was 5. And I'm just kidding, I was like 16. And finally they reviewed my application and they accepted it, and now I'm here.
Yes, I do remember someone saying that we finally had room in our budget for an unpaid intern.
Darren, when was that interview?
Cheryl, 2009.
After our GPS debacle.
GPS, Global Positioning System.
And that plays a part in this next story. Cheryl Threeds updates us.
It was 2008, and the air was palpably different. There was a sense of optimism after I had been accepted as the chief investigative intern at Local Look. I decided to leave college to pursue my passion, investigative internship. And the first lead I had gotten after 6 months of coffee runs was to take place in Long Beach, California.
We didn't have a budget to send Cheryl out.
But it was fine, because I still had $400 in my savings account. So just enough to buy a plane ticket down to California and stay in a hostel for 3 nights. But the real action takes place in the docks. I had been told that an inexperienced crew of submariners were hoping to do something never seen before. They were hoping to be the first seafaring vessel to surface in one of the Great Lakes in the continental United States.
It had been a lifelong dream of mine.
It had been something I'd been interested in, not too interested in, but that kind of interest that seems like a minor irritation.
I also like water.
I found an ad on Craigslist.
Of course, when I arrived at Long Beach, no one was there. I'd gotten the wrong information.
We were departing from the port of Seattle.
So, broke, I hitchhiked back to Seattle.
We still had no room in our budget for Cheryl's vacation.
So, arriving back in Seattle, I finally found them, the crew of the Dimwits.
And we invited Cheryl to come with us.
We wanted to balance out the gender ratio.
It's only fair.
The only problem?
None of us had any experience seafaring.
I get sick if I move side to side for too long.
But they carried on because...
We were all in an improv troupe in college, and if improv teaches you anything, it's to...
Yes, and?
To life.
So we set off. Remember, the goal of the expedition was to start in the Pacific Ocean, remain underwater through the Arctic Circle, and surface for the first time in Lake Superior, Michigan.
Some said it was impossible.
Others said it was implausible.
I said I don't know where north is.
But we went on anyway.
It had been a lifelong dream of mine, and it's surprising what exactly you'll find on Craigslist.
I was selling the submarine on Craigslist because my homeowners association said it didn't adhere to the homeowners aesthetics code.
Apparently submarines must be 20 feet and under.
Mine was 21 feet and over.
So the crew embarked.
I had never used my submarine before, but I did see Das Boot.
I took my notes from In the Navy by the village people.
I brought Dom Perignon.
No water.
Just Dom Perignon.
And so, with hopeful hearts, the crew submerged into the depths.
It's so crazy how quickly you learn when you're piloting a submarine for the first time.
Rule 1, close the hatch before it dives.
Rule 2, bring water, not just Dom Perignon.
Rule 3, yes and. Rule 4, diving into the depths can remind one of Dante's Inferno and his descent into hell.
Rule 5, remember to bring a battery for your recorder if you're the reporter. But as we dove and navigated, when you're stuck in a small vessel, you have discussions you wouldn't normally have in the overworld. Discussions that cause deep divisions.
Which way is north? We lost countless hours trying to figure that out. Considering there's a 25% of being correct, I think we did fairly well. We also didn't realize that our submarine didn't have engines.
So, the crew of the Dimmits didn't actually go anywhere. We just sunk to the bottom seafloor at the port of Seattle.
Which is, give or take, 10 feet.
But things took a turn 1,000 inches under the sea.
It's strange. Over those sweet, salty 72 hours, my perception of reality had changed. We overworlders spend so much time looking towards the horizon, looking past the place that we are. Always to the future.
But under the water, under the waves, in a 21-foot and over submarine, you spend your time looking at each other.
Of course, we didn't have power and there was no light.
We used echolocation.
Garapala.
And when under the sea, in isolation with a group of people, you begin to share things with them that you normally wouldn't share in the overworld. Because up above on land, you're under that judgmental thumb of the sun. That yellow, omnipotent globe that disapproves of everything you do, but under the waves, in the dark, you are the person that you are when you don't try to appease that hateful glow.
Say it another way. You are who you actually are, even when you communicate strictly in echolocation.
It's true. The crew of the Dimmits communicated exclusively in clicks and whistles over the 72 submerged hours. And we spoke in a language beyond language.
Garapala.
A language of the soul. Words are ideas rammed inelegantly through your vocal cords. Clicks are the movement of your most emotional self, undistilled by manipulated air.
Also, little known fact, clicks are the communications of the Ancient Ones. All hail the Ancient Ones. Death to the overworlders!
Of course, when the Port Authority discovered the submarine, they brought us aboard to the mainland.
They opened our hatch, and we saw the light again. The terrible burning light.
It was good. I was dehydrated. Dang Perignon is not a good substitute for water.
I had work that day anyway.
So we left each other, never to see each other again. Until right now, under these hateful lights. These imitations of that hateful sun.
So, we didn't reach our goal of being the first seafaring vessel to surface in a lake contained within the continental United States. But we learned something more important.
The Ancient Ones will not forgive you.
Canto 2.
Tell me your name again? No, your other one. In this section, a young woman sees a flood of naked crabs and wonders after humanity.
Pity the poor, shell-less hermit crab, left to navigate the world without any sort of trash armor. When I was on vacation in Belgrade, it was surprising the number of shell-less hermit crabs there. Perhaps it's a byproduct of their communist past. That, the structure of want that the Soviet Union had installed in humanity, and transferred to the animal kingdom. Whatever the reason, pity the poor, shell-less hermit crab. I was in Sakhalin to discuss the study of Homo sapien abscondita in desertum inadvert with Dr. Harmony Atenal.
It turns out that nature has instilled in the human animal and other social animals the neurological pathways which reward living duplicitous. In fact, the authentic person is the suffering person.
And that's crazy if you think about it. But Dr. Atenal's theories, which simply stated are...
It is better to be unreal than to be real.
Which I know sounds crazy, but...
People are only comfortable to reveal themselves when they are masquerading, a veil of lies. The veil can be many things, either a discarded soup can, the veil can also be a person we tell ourselves we are, or the veil can be ignorance.
Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. However, perhaps it's more true to say that the unobserved life is the life most truly lived. To help with this point is my girlfriend, Elizabeth Blank.
This is a story that, although I'm not proud of, is something that needs to be shared.
This took place when she had gotten her first apartment.
It was my first real place. The first apartment I didn't need to share with roommates. A place of my own for the first time.
Until I moved in.
But this happens before that. Across the way from my apartment was another apartment. 2 stories above mine, but angled in such a way that I could see them, but they couldn't see me. Inside this apartment, a couple, or at least I assumed they were a couple. There were 2 distinctly different people sharing the same space, but I had never actually seen them in the apartment at the same time.
This is Sharon Fauntleroy, the woman who leased the apartment to Elizabeth.
I did. The woman who leased the apartment. I did. I leased it to Gina, and I used to live in the apartment. The same apartment.
And Sharon had noticed the same thing.
2 different people. A man and a woman who lived as though they lived in the same place, but never seemed to act as if they knew each other.
And what I'm talking about here is that in the morning, the first person, who I'll call Lark, would get up, do yoga, eat grapefruit, listen to the radio, and leave. And then, about 20 minutes later, the second person, who I'll call Owl, would come in and be seemingly baffled by the mess in the apartment.
It was the same with me.
And Owl would clean up the mess that Lark had left and go to sleep. And their morning routine started more or less about 4 p.m., meaning they would wake up, take a shower, eat, and then leave about 4:30.
Then
Lark would arrive and be baffled by the same mess. Clean up, relax until it was time to go to bed, and then the cycle would repeat.
Now here's where it gets weird.
My friend is a medium, and one day she got a call to the apartment building across from mine. So first she came by my place and we had some coffee and talked about this and that, until she told me about her new case.
This case involved a haunting, which in the greater Seattle area is unsurprising. Seattle has the 4th highest amount of hauntings per capita in a study of Pacific Side cities.
So she tells me that she's getting a call from this apartment right across from mine, and that it's a place she's had to contend with before. That despite the amount of burnt sage and expulsion spells, it's been consistently haunted. So I wish her adieu and go about my work when you'll never guess.
You've probably guessed.
The haunting was taking place in the apartment that I could look into. Lark was having the place investigated by a medium.
And then the same thing happened with a different medium with Owl.
Apparently both Lark and Owl thought they were being haunted by some unnatural spirit. But in actuality, they were simply missing each other due to a scheduling clerk and a lazy leasing officer. Never knowing that one apartment was housing 2 different lives.
In fact,
the only time Lark and Owl came close to their lives overlapping was when Como 5 did a special interest piece on the hauntings of La Camina apartments, featuring Lark on Monday night and Owl on Tuesday morning. And pretty soon, it became something of a draw. Spiritual leaders from all over the Northwest came to investigate the extremely strong spiritual disruption in that apartment. No one ever figured it out.
there's even been talks about having the La Camina apartment incorporated into the Seattle Haunted Tour. So why did you never tell Lark or Owl about the other?
Well, I guess the reason I never told either one of them about the other is they just seemed so happy to talk to somebody, even if it was a medium or an investigative journalist. I mean, in the year all of this took place, I never saw either Owl or Lark bring anybody home with them. Never getting dressed for a special occasion. Every day, just simple exercises of routine for a life that never really required examination. And this haunting? Well, this haunting seemed to be the first time that they ever felt connected to something other than their loneliness.
After the commercial break, a liar who's looking for some recognition and finds something completely different.
Consideration from Seattle Museum of Dentistry. This month featuring the special exhibit POW, Right in the Kisser, which showcases famous Seattle boxers and the dentists who care for them. To find out more about this special exhibit and others, visit us in Belltown or on the web at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry/kisser.org or at www.seattlemuseumofdentistry.
Canto 3,
Our third and final canto.
Speak It, Be It. Cheryl Threeds has this final story from Columbia City.
Thank you, Frederick. Over in England, they have a competition called the World's Biggest Liar Award, awarded yearly. The only qualifications, no lawyers and no politicians because, and this is a quote, they're too skilled at telling porkies. A porky is English slang for lie. The World's Biggest Liar Award is an extremely prestigious award for people with silver tongues. Only one American has ever won the award in the history of lying. That person, Orson Welles, for his War of the Worlds broadcast. In fact, Americans have proven so bad at telling lies that the Seattle American Prevarication Society, SAPS for short, the home for Northwest veracity bending athletes, was founded. SAPS has sort of fallen into disrepair. In fact, I spoke to one of the representatives from SAPS and he said that the biggest crime Richard Nixon ever committed was Watergate, not because of political or moral ramifications, but because if former President Richard Nixon had not chosen a career in politics, he would have been a champion of the highest order in the World's Biggest Liar competition. However, this was until Perseus Opozo came on the scene.
I'm Perseus Opozo.
Perseus was a childhood friend of Brant Clover, who you saw earlier in the program, and Perseus has known ever since he was a child that he wanted to win the World's Biggest Liar Award.
The award for telling the world's biggest lie.
And Perseus had been telling lies since he was a child. Do you remember your first lie?
My first lie? My teacher asked me my name, and I said it was Amadeus.
And Perseus was a prodigious liar.
I loved Odysseus as a boy. Greek myths taught me that one could lie to the gods. I liked that.
When did you first hear about the World's Biggest Liar competition?
Instead of answering that, I'm going to tell you something else. My family's original last name before we immigrated to America through Ellis Island was Phalanx. And do you know what Phalanx means, Cheryl?
Lie?
No, truth. Furthermore, Perseus comes from the Lithuanian word speak. So my name more precisely, if we take the original intention, means speak truth. What I mean by this is that as a child, I was concerned with the power of words. I was always intrigued by manipulation. And furthermore, if we're to call upon string theory,
which frequently happens at the World's Biggest Liar Awards.
If we call upon string theory and multiple universe theory, then you would be well aware that in a universe of infinite possibilities, that means something I'm saying is always truthful, even if the truth isn't necessarily occurring in this universe.
So Perseus began lying. Were you ever caught?
Would you believe me if I said yes?
Yes.
Then yes.
Perseus, although prodigiously intelligent, frequently got poor grades in school, though his parents never knew.
D's, if one extends two bottom points, make convincing A's, and F's are easily looped into B's.
To make money in high school, the budding young liar took up magic.
Magic is sleight of hand. Lying is sleight of mouth.
And after high school, instead of going to college, Perseus found an internship at Enderson in Southern California.
They knew talent when they saw it.
And then there was even a brief flirtation with Bertie Madoff in New York.
A flirtation which almost became an affair, but I find stealing distasteful. I'm a simple liar, not a thief. Also, the World's Biggest Liar competition wasn't very interested in fiduciary obfuscations, and my time would not have been well spent there.
Instead, he joined SAPS,
where I met some of my greatest friends. I'm unsure whether I actually know their real names.
It's there that he enters the North American Mendacity competition and tells a real humdinger.
I was able to convince one of the judges that their car was not actually their car, but was in fact an Armenian tangerine. I accomplished this by using the biology of fruit, and more specifically the biology of citrus, and also the contribution of latter-day Armenia to the worldwide fruit culture and the taxonomy of cars of ill dispute.
With these wins under his belt, Briseis finally got his invitation to the big game, the world's biggest liar competition.
To be amongst one's peers is a true joy in itself.
And to hear the lies being told were a wonder. We had the standard lies like climate denial, flat earth advocates, and home remedies for dandelions. But the biggest competition came from a Portuguese separatist about vision. The Portuguese separatist described how prescription glasses are, in actuality, your vision being deceived. You see, if your eye's natural state is 40-20 or 80-20, then that's how your body is interpreting the world. By wearing glasses that correct to 20-20, you are in fact seeing the world in its entirety incorrectly. What you are actually doing is seeing the world by a standardized truth and not your own. In other words, deception through clarity. But Briseis knew.
I knew that the lie I had planned simply wouldn't do.
What did you plan to tell?
My initial plan was to talk about how laughter is a depreciation of humor, that humor, in its healing properties and inoculation against the symptoms of postmodern depression brought on by the modern world, laughter, or showing appreciation for humor through laughter, is a depreciation of levity itself. Laughing is a mocking response to humor and insufficiently deferential. But since someone had convincingly argued that corrected vision was itself a lie, I knew I had to go bigger than I'd ever gone before.
So Briseis did something he had never before attempted.
I told the truth.
What did you tell them?
I told them that when I was very small, that the one thing that always brought a smile to my face were old tapes my mother had of a children's entertainer she had grown up watching in Lithuania town, Pennsylvania. His name was Mr. Gazergaliga.
So, at a competition for the world's greatest liar, Briseis of Pozo told the truth.
And what happened?
Briseis won.
He won.
I won.
How did that happen?
I think, if you permit me to get inside the judges' heads for a moment, remember all his life, Briseis had endeavored to become the world's greatest liar, and had trained all his life to become a great liar. But then, at the moment to showcase all of his life's training, Briseis told the truth. And in telling the truth, did Briseis not tell a greater lie? What greater lie is there for a liar to do than tell the truth? It is in effect telling himself and his whole purpose a lie. In fact, he lied to himself on a metaphysical level, which is superior to lies received through the senses, because metaphysical lies occur a priori of the senses. It is a deceit originating from the self.
Then this local life.
We'd like to thank all of our contributors. They're going to come out and give a round of applause when I say their names. First off is soundscape consultant Robbie Schroeder.